Most Muslim people actually want, quote, an Islamic state. And there is no way around that. The question is that the grassroots, they really don't know what they mean when they say we want an Islamic state. So to say that the Muslims around the world want an Islamic state and there's this rah-rah-rah business, that is not true. When they say they want an Islamic state, they want something that works. And their current systems don't work, and they are corrupt and ineffective and being imposed upon them without their will and so on. So they want something that just works in this solution to corruption and so on. That's what they mean. They want something that works. And you know, if you look at the Pew Research and so on, they will say the people who are most in favor of an Islamic state are the Pakistanis. Of course, no one really goes and says, what do the Pakistanis really want? Do they want an Islamic state dominated by some people with long beards and so on? The answer is no. They have defeated those people with long beards in every single election. So that's not it. Then many outsiders claim, and I put it in quotation marks because that's what you hear. What do they say? They want to establish a worldwide caliphate. How many times have you seen this? They want to establish a worldwide caliphate that would be anti-democratic and oppress women and non-Muslims. That's what you see in the news media and the headlines all the time. So I say, so they, who they are, do they desire, do they derive their authority from the Quran or the sacred texts? Whoever they are and whatever it is that they are being accused of having. And what about what I call the statists? Because all these modern movements want to establish a state in the modern sense. Nothing that can be sanctioned in any sense in Islam. And we have heard about that a lot, and we'll talk a little bit about that. Perhaps, if not, ask me the question. The statists are the one who want to establish, quote, an Islamic state in the modern sense. In the modern state is oppressive. All power is concentrated in the government. There is no opportunity to have a diversity. It's all intrusive. It wants to control the private life and everything else, and doesn't permit people to keep their private life separate from the common, and so the modern state is the people who say we want an Islamic state. They are all statists. What they want is a modern state, and not an Islamic state in any sense of the word. I think it's important to know what. I may have to come around to see it better. Oops, what did I do? Some terms, so we have an idea what we're talking about. You know, we have the word state, these are modern words, union, commonwealth, federation. The United States has 50 states, right? Are all of them states? There are some that are called commonwealths, right? How many? Well, Pennsylvania is one. Virginia is one. How about Massachusetts? Massachusetts. Yeah. So there are other things that are, and why are they commonwealths rather than a state? Because they had associations before the union was formed, and they maintained those things. Actually, Rhode Island, plantations and so on, they were a part of the system. So they didn't change the name. How about Texas? Yes, because it was already an independent nation who agreed to join the union. The only one, by the way, which has the right to secede. The only one that can just secede by saying, we secede. And there is a movement that often surfaces that says, let's secede. So anyway, so the United States is a federation of states, right? So it is not a state in the European sense. And we have these different ways of elections that are embedded in the Constitution itself. And since it's a federation, you have to treat the parts of the union somewhat on an equal basis. So if you say, well, let's have democracy and the majority decide, well, 4 or 5 states will decide, and the rest of the states of the union, they will say, okay, we don't belong here, we're seceding, and you will have another civil war. So the Constitution was an exercise, by the way, that was totally illegal, because when they met, they were not sent to create a constitution, but to solve a problem of the national debt. But that's a different story. And if it wasn't because of just one guy who had done the study and had a draft, they would still be talking about whether we should have a monarchy, and if so, who, other than George Washington, who didn't want to be a king, who should it be and what the title should be. And unfortunately for these people, when someone said, well, so who would be the king if we want one? And they said, well, George Washington, of course. And he says, that's the end of that discussion, let's go to someplace else. So the United States, I think it's important that it is not a state like the European states. And the American Revolution is different than that of the French Revolution, which was violent, and they killed their own founders and so on. And very soon, was overtaken by dictators, and then had to reestablish. It didn't quite happen in the United States, but of course, that's a different story. There was a fellow named Alistair Cook. Does anyone know that name? He wrote a 2-volume thing on the story of the United States. I think it's good to read that one. While universal means worldwide, the structure, the governance, sustainability, you need all these 3 things. When you say you have a state, what is the structure, how is it going to be governed, and how do you sustain itself? I think I thought it would be, these are not all of them, but if you look at the United States Constitution, you will see these are the functions that a state must perform. Levying war, conclude peace, contract alliances, establish commerce, and there are other functions that are in the Constitution, but these are the minimum rudiments of a state. So when we talk about an Islamic state, we'll have to see whether all of these ever existed, and the people who want to establish an Islamic state, whether they have any idea how any of these things will be done. Just some words again. Khalifa or Khilafa, Caliph, Imara, the Amir. Mamluka, Al-Mamlukatul Saudiyatul Arabiya, Arabiyatul Saudiya, the things that this entity, it's like a corporation called the Saudi Corporation that owns now these territories. In Dawla, that kind of alternates, changes and so on, in dynasties and so on. And then there's Sultan, who has power and might and authority. So let's look at the word Khilafah. And I'll come to some of those terms as we go along, but not too much. The word Khilafah or Caliph and so on, in a singular, appears in the Quran only twice. Once in relationship to the creation of Adam. Well, actually it doesn't say Adam, but when it says we are going to create a caliph on earth. Inna ja'alna fil ardi Khalifa. When your Lord said to the angels, I will place a deputy on earth. And the second time it appears is in relationship with David. When it says, O David, we made you a deputy on earth, so judge between people by truth, without following your own desires, because that will deflect you from the way of God. For those who stray from the way of God, there is severe agony because they have forgotten the way of reckoning. So it essentially is addressing David that says, well, you are a deputy and you are supposed to, act justly and so on. And these are the singular Khalifa is used only in these two senses. Khalif, Khulafa, plural, and so on. These are nations that succeed each other, and the Quran uses this word a lot. Nations succeeding each other, people succeeding each other, and so on. So Khalifa is used for Adam or David. What do different people call it? So Ashraf Ali Thanwi is in his famous tafsir, which is from 1990, he just says naib. Naib is a deputy in Urdu, subordinate. Muhammad Ali, remember I mentioned that's one of the earlier translations. He called it ruler. Pickthall, I cannot find the date on at least the copy I have. He just says viceroy. What do you think he'll call it viceroy? He's English, right? He's English, so he calls it a viceroy in the translation. Yusuf Ali, who wants to be Elizabethan, he called it vicegerent, whatever that means. And then N.J. Dawood, who is a non-Muslim and who always puts in whatever biases he has, he says, a long word, one who should rule as God's successor. That's what he says. Well, he's not a Muslim. Abul Ala Mududi, he just says Khalifa, because in Urdu you can use the word Khalifa. And Thomas Cleary says deputy. So what does the word Khalifa mean? It just means a deputy, okay? Not necessarily a ruler and so on, successor, if you wish, in the plural.